I was born in Marion, Indiana, right in the front room of the 908 South McClure Street house. Across McClure Street was Aunt Mary Gorman's house. She was my godmother. She's a very good friend of my mom's. Right behind their house is where the train tracks were. And every morning we'd wake up to the sound of clunk, bang, clunk, bang, and stuff, the trains all banging into each other. Number one, if hobos came to the back door because the train tracks were just a block away, and they were the ones that jumped aboard the train. And they would come over to our back door, knock on the door, and they were sure to get something to eat. And they passed the word on to each other, I'm sure, because they were there almost daily.
Mother was a good manager.
Yeah,
And I mean, whatever money she had, she always seemed to.
She could make it spread because we didn't have anything like luxury or anything.
of course, so many people helped each other back in the 30s.
Yeah, that's right.
They all had little pin money jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Selling trash and glass.
Cupcakes.
Cupcakes and cookies.
Oh yeah, and we used to go to the part of town that was better off, and we would have, I would always tell them, did you and I go together?
I
thought two of
selling
us did.
the cupcakes.
And we'd always say, this is the last one, so we buy our last one, then we run home and get some more.
Oh.
There are things like that you manage, but the people seem to help each other.
Mother said
that's the way it's
when
like.
she was desperate for money and was down to the last dime or something, she couldn't figure out what to use it for in order to make cookies, so she borrowed ingredients to make the first batch.
Well,
Somebody,
of
her
course,
neighbor.
when the
And then-
Leaf organization came in,
Oh,
we used to get it,
We get some
take our
flour
wagon
and
down and get whatever flour
flour
and
and
stuff,
whatever,
sugar.
and then we'd sell them, and then she'd use the profit from that to get more ingredients, and eventually she accumulated some cash.
The backyard was the schoolyard and the parking lot for the church, our backyard, all put together in one big piece.
Handy for school, handy for church.
Meant broken windows in the back of the house.
Yeah, that's right.
But it didn't mean great playground for us kids.
We played a lot back there. We played baseball, football.
Basketball, go outside, still there incidentally, or at least in the same place.
Yeah.
And it was great because then we had a big playground, and all the neighborhood kids came to the schoolyard to play with it.
Yeah,
We had a
that
lot
was
of, we were
always
able
where
to
we,
have a lot of kids to play.
And I always came in last. That's because they were all older than me,
it meant no back lawn.
That's right. There wasn't too much grass
Or
to
any
cut.
front lawn hardly either.
One of the hazards was that if some kids didn't show up to serve for 6 o'clock mass, there was always a nun over our back door, and
You want
Victor
somebody
and
to serve, yeah.
I had to run over and serve.
Next door was a great big house, only it wasn't a house, it was the gymnasium for the school. And boy, we could sneak over there when Father McCarthy wasn't looking, or if it was locked, we'd go over there and figure out how to open the door. And we'd get in there and play basketball anytime we felt like it. And it was a nice gym. It wasn't anywhere near full size, but it was a very, very nice gym, basketball floor. Around the house, Ed and I used to throw things at each other, to each other. Actually, it was at each other. He would usually win, just like Ed had to wrestle in bed after he woke up, and he would beat me up because he was 4 years older than me. And, if he wrestled too much, I would get underneath the sheet and play like I was dead, see? And then he couldn't hurt me anymore. It was just unfair. It was awful. But we had a lot of fun. The front room upstairs was Mom and Dad's room until summer came. And then that dropped right straight down to the front room downstairs. The room, and then the upstairs room became the girls' room.
I didn't know what was my bedroom till I was about 12 or 13. There were about 5 bedrooms in the house. house, there could have been 6, but the one we used as a big closet, and Dad put a bunch of racks so we have place, because our closets were very tiny. We also threw stuff all over the floor in
That
that
was
room.
fun to hide in.
But anyway, we just had wherever, I mean, I don't know when we had our own rooms. You and Sis slept together.
Oh my goodness, not until after half the kids left.
Yeah, then we kind of started to have rooms of our own. But
Before that, though, I have memories of pillow fights.
do you?
I must not have been very big. All the pillow fights were between room 2 and room 3. Room
And
Room
there
three
were,
had all the girls in it.
Joe, the boys always got the advantage over us. They were stronger. And they'd flip us with dish towels, for instance.
Oh yeah.
Or if we got in a little fight or something and they hit us, and we tried to hit back, and it never worked because they did us harder. I mean, they were stronger. Now, edgy, because he was so
must have
sweet.
been a good girl, Celia, because I don't remember doing all that to me.
And I remember teasing Mary Agnes
You
all
were
the
tough.
time. Do you remember Mary Agnes getting so mad at me all the time, and then I'd tease her, and then she'd laugh, and she'd be mad because she had to laugh?
I went through that with Tom.
Oh, God.
Tom would lose his temper and get so mad. And no matter he hit them more, I would laugh. And he said that would make him madder. Finally,
We were pretty typical family.
Yeah,
I think.
why not?
The room on the right was Ed and my room together. And then we had the back room, back bedroom. It was a pretty big room. And that ended up being my room, I think. And right next to that was Dad's, was this big closet type room. That's where Dad's paint room was. And it was kind of fun to sneak in there once in a while and look at things. It was easy to get to.
Now I remember Grandpa's workshop in the house on McClure Street. That was always the most mysterious place to me. He had
Never
that,
allowed it.
no, he had that curtain in front, and that was mysterious.
I don't know if he could even close the door. There was so much junk in there. It's right at the top of the steps, but it was full of junk. And those pictures that I probably have told you about, yeah, that I'm not allowed to talk about on film. Much earlier, but before I knew anything about it, I found a picture in Dad's cabinet that had photographs, paintings, and this sort of thing. And in there was this picture of a nude lady, beautiful lady. I pulled it out and I says to my dad, whoa, wow. And he immediately took it away from him and hid it. Now, I don't know where he hid it because I never saw it after that. But he wasn't real happy with me. But I had no idea who it was at that time. I was just a little guy.
Dad,
I didn't know he had been married.
I think we were pretty
Over
old
13
before
before I
we ever
knew.
knew anything about it, yeah.
And I don't know why.
He didn't talk about it, and Mother didn't talk about
Maybe
it.
he was afraid to because it was one of the things that led to his breakdown. Maybe he thought he couldn't
Well,
face
we don't
remember.
know. We don't know that. I mean,
I've heard so many stories from so many different people that, see, I just found out not too long ago that 7 years that they were married.
Well, that's
All
what he
those
said.
years, I thought he was just married that 1 year.
I did too.
Yeah, I think-
That's what it said in the Reader's Digest
Yeah.
article, 7 years.
that's why you almost have to believe it because Dad wrote that himself.
Probably did.
Yeah, he wrote that article. But see, I think we're all pretty hazy on that phase of his life because it was not discussed.
Yeah. And I never asked him about it.
Well, I don't think anybody did. For one thing, I don't think Mother wanted to talk about it. Maybe it was a bad memory for him. You know, all that.
Sadness.
Yeah. So who knows? Gosh, he was a good-looking son of a
Yeah,
gun,
that was
wasn't he?
cute. Wasn't that cute?
One of you nieces or nephews did a lot of research. And then it was coming to me step by step by step. And now I know very much about her. I know where she was born. I know where she died. Amazing. Memories of my dad is helping him paint pictures, posing for him for the child Jesus, the boy Jesus. I had a nightgown on, I remember that. I think I had to stand up on a chair and he took that picture, and I didn't know what he was doing. You know. And the rose on me in that picture wasn't there, of course. He painted the rose in. I didn't see the results of the picture until he showed me the painting. And I said, "Is that me? Is that what I look like?" You know, and I was the child Jesus. And that's why I got that funny ring around my head, the halo. And it's just like I was watching him when he painted the picture of the boy David, which was my brother Dick, playing a harp. Dick never touched a harp in his life. He used a shade roller for the harp, you know, so he could look like this. And I watched him paint that.
So the thing behind them was actually a glider. It was an outdoor glider.
Yeah.
You remember we had that in the dining room?
I watched him paint that. And how can you do that? That's not what it looks like. Helping him do a lot of stuff. I went to Kokomo where he worked in the hospital, and I helped him scrape and paint and whatever it took. And he did such beautiful, beautiful work.
My start was probably when I was probably 35, and I would have been 6 years old anyway. And they used to rent the scaffolding, and it had these double-headed nails, and scaffolded the whole church's first time.
How he did it, I'll never know. The beautiful, beautiful paintings on the ceiling of St. Paul's Church in Marion. And the ceiling was way up there, and it was curved, and he built the scaffolding all by himself with rented wood. You ever hear of rented wood from a lumber yard? Yeah, it was. And he would go to the top of this thing. I have a ladder on the side of the scaffold. He'd go all the way up to the top of that thing and lie on his back painting these beautiful paintings on the ceiling.
So when they dismantled, after they were all done, they were dismantling sections and taking them out in the churchyard, and of course there were nails all over that place. So he told me he would give me a penny for each 100 nails I picked up. You know, I had a little pail. So that was, I had a whole lot of friends in the neighborhood, so I ran and got all the kids to get their buckets. I said, my dad will give you a penny for every 100 nails you pick up, which later on I got the devil part from Mom. And not just that, but it was that these kids couldn't count too well. They'd go up to Mom and say, well, I got 740 nails. There was probably only about 30 nails in their bucket. But anyway, that was my start with helping Dad, really. One of them was working on the church in Winchester, Indiana, that had these metal square ceilings, individual squares, and each square was very ornate. And I got the job while Herman and Dad were doing the sanctuary. I got the job of painting these squares. And that had to be at least 35 years ago, and I still know there were exactly 964 squares. That was the type of job I was, I had to be a flunky since I was a young But then I had some jobs that I did other type of work too that I really enjoyed.
Dad was just a great guy and a great artist. He had a lot of patents. The silk stencil and the Vertex. He invented the stencil. I'm sure he invented it, and used Burfix to paint through the stencils for some of the linings of the paintings. And boy, he did a magnificent job. He almost made a living sometimes doing that for people. Not very often, but he did.
He had a couple of other patents, didn't he?
Yes, but they were practically stolen from him. I hate to tell it because he was no businessman. He was absolutely no businessman. And he went to a lawyer in Battle Creek. This lawyer told him he could sell it for him. He wanted to sell the one patent. Well, at that time, $1,000 was a lot of money, you know. He gave the lawyer permission to sell it for him. And the lawyer lied to him. He told him, he said, he could only get, I don't know what he got for it, but he would take his percentage out of it. And he gave Dad $2,000 for it.
That much?
$2,000. And he sold it for $35,000.
Oh, no.
But he told, Dad found it out later on. And Dad lost faith in everybody. He lost faith in everybody. Then he went to New York and sold a patent on bird text.
The silk screen.
And
So that patent he sold in Battle Creek, was that for the billboard painting?
it had to do with the pictures, with the sign painting business. Poor Dad, if he could have had even 10,000 out of it, would have been something. Oh, well, those are all days of the past. I don't even care to think about it because I used to think if he'd have let me handle when I did handle it, I used to help him, you know, when I had my first babies. Then, of course, when you got to have 4 or 5 kids, you just don't have time anymore for all that.
You guys lived on the church grounds, so did you pay rent for that, or was that?
Oh, yeah.
Well, now Mom
Both.
did for a long time.
Well, for a long time, that was the
But
pay
when-
for the church.
I know it. And I can remember though when she started paying Father $20 a month,
Yeah.
she was very happy that she was paying $20 a month. And in fact, that's what she was paying her at the end.
Mom said you had a maid when you lived in Battle Creek?
And for a while,
Yeah.
you know. Not long. No, things went from bad to worse, you know.
Yeah,
We lost our home.
Mom said you guys, when you lived on McClure, that you didn't have hot water for, when I was a kid, you didn't have
I
hot
know,
water.
and
I didn't know that.
I worked hard, and when I did those big washings, and let me tell you something, they were washing. When our boys went to school, they wore shirts with stiff collars and cuffs, and not sweatshirts.
Yeah. Right.
That was unheard of, and I used to iron 24 shirts every week. I mean, dress-up shirts. And the girls' dresses, you know, they wore petticoats, full petticoats. Oh, when I think over those things, and I had to lift every bucket of water and heat it in a boiler, copper boiler, on the gas stove to do that washing. And I would have to have about 3 to 4 of those boilers full before I got all the washing done. Now, and then you had to dip your rinse water, and that was a narrow kitchen. I had to get every bit of it from the faucet in the sink in the kitchen. Now, if you think I didn't work,
Yeah.
no wonder those poor legs hurt.
But one thing we did do, remember about the Saturday night shows or whatever, we were entertaining, trying to get Mom and Dad cheered up and laughing and stuff.
Yeah, but then, you know, Celia, I mean, I wish you wouldn't bring that to mind because you and Marion used to do fine, but Mother always said I looked like a cow with a crutch.
Sing and dancing.
Restless.
had a natural stage. Yeah, they did the 2 living rooms, and they had an archway between them. And there was plenty of room on each side to serve as dressing rooms. And so they would come out, well, all
It was
kinds
like
of
a
things.
stage.
Sometimes they'd come out from both sides onto the stage, and sometimes they would just come out from the dining room, which was the other side. And sometimes it would just be 2 of you, and sometimes it would be all of us, and there was different ones, but I don't know, that was the Hamptons.
It was usually Saturday night. I
Yeah.
cleaned house and everything,
Yeah,
and we were
that's
kind of
right.
tired. There was a fireplace, and the obstacle was unbelievable because the fireplace wasn't usable, and in front of the fireplace was the heating stove, a pretty good sized heating stove, and there was just space behind it. In front of the fireplace, Joe, was some set-in tile, sort of like ceramic tile type of stuff, and we couldn't afford tap shoes. And if you had leather-soled shoes and you got on that tile, it made sort of noise like tapping. So we sometimes get back on, it was only about this wide, and we'd stand there and try to tap at as best we could.
You did Mary Agnes.
Mary Agnes.
That's right.
And try to tap because it made noise sort of like tap shoes, you know. And we didn't have anything much planned, we just did silly,
Silly.
sort of
Yeah.
spontaneous.
Yeah.
I am in Philadelphia. You are? Yeah. What are you doing here? Oh, just visiting. Who are you visiting? Herman's and the Statue of Liberty and the Liberty Bell. And what'd you see? And girl, yeah. Like just there, we're going to have things for you. In the little sunny town on a little playground where the gymnast goes all around, and looks that was so badly torn that it crumbled to the ground. Just a little old shack and still with that spot, 25 feet from the railroad track. Leaning over my most all the time. He's calling me back from the window, so I have to do this, that's Holly, Colossus. If I were king, wouldn't mean a thing, because the bird gods always writing on the wall, and it wouldn't mean a thing, not a doggone thing. There's a king waiting there in a rocking chair, down off the top on a take a beer, looking all around and talking on down, cause I gotta get back to the catty town. That was beautiful, feeling. No, it was too beautiful.
I don't know, Herman just fiddle with the piano sometimes.
Or plays clarinet.
I can remember us making up some type things, but not very often.
We used to sing opera.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, we'd sing opera.
But
We made that up as we went along, too.
Let me tell you, it was nothing that would get on stage or any place. It was just us letting
Yeah.
off steam and trying to get mom and dad to giggle and laugh.
Dad was just a great guy and a great artist. He was just happy to be around. The only problem he had was he liked to tip the wine bottle, and he would get a little. So he didn't get nasty or anything. He just mumble, or we didn't understand exactly what he was doing or why he was doing it. It got pretty bad for a while, and then I don't know. He got to the point where he had to quit. He wanted to quit, and Mom didn't like that he was drinking. So he quit drinking, except that he would once in a while go down to his, what he called his workroom, down in the basement. Now, basement is where we kept coal was put in there, and then you walk around the edge of it, and there was a room way in the back. He did a little work down there, but mostly he tipped his wine bottle down there. And there was another entrance, by the way, to that room back there, the basement room, was a big flat door that you lifted up on a side porch of the house, and steps that went down to it. So if he got caught going down there, he could escape going out to the side porch door. I think Mom kept a lot of canned goods down there too. We would sneak down there just every once in a while, and we'd find that bottle of wine, and we had to snip a little taste of it, make us. just to say that we were now grown-up kids. We could drink alcohol, but not when Mom was around. Anyway, she was a beautiful lady. She was not exactly underweight, but she wasn't fat either. But just a great personality. She loved everything. She loved to play cards. She didn't like to get beat. She just was so loving. Really kind of hard to explain. She put my head on the pillow when I was a baby, when I was very young, and made me keep it there. She cooked the meals at school and at the cafeteria that she was mostly responsible for starting, because they didn't have any food for the kids before that. She went to Mass every morning at 6 o'clock to play the organ and sing for the Mass. And if somebody didn't show up for the 8 o'clock Mass, she went back for that every morning. And every now and then we'd go over and sing with her.
Well, she sang at weddings, but she played the same masses in the summer when the sisters were going. See, the sisters were there during winter, the school kids sang.
Oh yeah.
She played the organ for herself. She admittedly, she was not a great organist, but she could play all of the wonderful songs that she sang. You know, the Kyrie eleison, Christe eleison, and she was up in the upper level, so she could sing out over the crowd and could hear her very well. She had a beautiful voice.
Yeah, it'd be unusual to miss Mass.
Who you just didn't think it.
We didn't think otherwise. That's just the way it was. It was natural.
I can remember two night prayers, you know. We used to
Well, I can't hardly talk about night.
Well, I know, but what I mean is that probably, like a lot of times when you discover that it wasn't hammers on us, it was have mercy on us.
Oh, hammers on us.
And you'd ask questions about that, and I think we were always answered well.
You know, every night she'd gather us up. Well, first of all, she'd gather us all up to say the rosary after we had supper.
The reason I say I can't talk about night prayers is because I always remember the giggling we did. Why we did the giggling.
Why did you do
I
that?
wonder why she keeps saying we.
Can I say it on a VCR tape why we did the giggling?
Yeah, please.
Because somebody
FCC.
always
broke wind.
broke wind. Somebody always broke wind, and then everybody giggled. Oh dear.
And then we would go into the front living room and stand around the piano and sing 4 parts. Be singing songs all the time. Usually 4 parts. Let's see, Rita was the soprano, Celia was the alto, Mary Agnes was the alto also, Dad was the bass, I was a tenor. Who else was it? Ed. I think Ed sang bass, yeah. Dick sang, I guess he must have sang bass too.
The music fest when Mom used to play the piano, I have a memory about the lady that came up to the door one day, knocked on the door while everybody was singing. She wanted to know if it'd be all right if she sat and listened.
Oh, yes, I remember that. I remember that. Gosh, when Mother was Mother of the Year, I think we were all real proud of
That
that.
was first Mother Bir. Also, when people would come to the house, Mother would always say, show them the paintings. You know, she would always show them the paintings, so we were always kind of proud about that. And like midnight mass, after midnight mass, we'd pray to clean up the house, and then Mother would have all kinds of good food and homemade fruitcake and stuff, and the house would be absolutely packed after midnight mass.
I think it was because they could walk out of church
And
right to our house that
And
it
they
went over so
they would
well.
be so crowded that, remember, they'd sit on the steps. There was a stairway up the dining room, then then a platform, then down into the living room. They'd sit on all those steps and have their goodies.
She did everything for everybody. She's a saint. I mean, she was a living saint and is a saint right now. It was a very, very happy house. Except when me and Ed got in an argument. I mean, a fight, not an argument. And Dick used to be a pretty good arguer too. He loved to argue, and he would come up with points that he had read about, you know, and so he wanted to show off that he read this stuff, and so he'd brag a little bit and argue with us about most anything. It was fun though. Mom sat at the right side of the table so she could get up and get the food and bring it around. And Dad, he sat right next to the bench where I sat at the head of the table, and Mom next to him, and then Mary Agnes, and we had the city in order. And because I was the youngest, it went around clockwise, and Herman would be the first chair, and then Mary Agnes, and so on. We'd always have to say a prayer, the double prayer before we ate. Blessed the Lord in these thy gifts which we are about to receive in thy body through Christ the Lord. Amen. Come, O Lord, be our guest, and share the gifts which thou hast blessed. Amen. And it almost went that fast, too, because some of these guys were hungry. And they wanted to get it, and that food was laying right in front of them, you know, and they had to pray. They said, okay. Herman was, 12 years older than me. There was 4 years between each of the boys. In 1939, he joined the Army. How old was I when the war started? In 41, I was 7 years old. Somebody had to do some work around the house, so I passed papers, and I brought all the money home. And then I helped Mom at the school for the lunchroom at the school. And during the war, number one, the food was rationed, although good old Mr. Bowles owned a grocery store about a block and a half away from our house. And he knew that we didn't have a lot of money, so he managed to keep some of the food aside. Food was rationed. If we were allowed to buy 1 quart of milk, he would set aside a second quart. He was just a kind guy. And Mom was scared to death because she could see the war coming. And Herman was already in the Army Air Corps, and Dick was of the age. He was in the seminary at the time, and he came home, said, I'm going to war. And I remember my mom just almost screaming and crying so loud because she wanted him to be a priest and really wanted him to be a priest. And so he quits that and then goes to war where he could get killed. Boy, oh boy, it was suffering like you never saw. And I watched it. Dick was in the middle of some of the worst parts of the war. The Battle of the Bulge, which was a pretty horrible battle. He and my brother-in-law, Dutch Kelley, were in the same battle. When they came, the bells all over town were ringing. People were screaming and outside, just being very happy. After VE Day, that was all of our family in it. And that was the important one for Mom. She was happy. We were all happy. Oh, that was a wonderful time, meeting him when he got off the bus. Oh, I enjoyed that. That was fun. Half the city of Marion was there because there were other guys getting off the bus too. You know, there wasn't room to do much of anything but scream and yell and have fun and celebrate. And boy, there was a lot of that. Herman was a neat guy. When he came back after the war in Europe, and he met Jerry and everybody, that was a wonderful time meeting him when he got off the bus. Oh, I enjoyed that. Herman then when he got married to Jerry, and I loved Jerry a lot. She was a good lady. Anyway, they lived in this little house in Ida Shepherd's old house and her property. I helped him clear it so he could build a house. And I did a lot of work with him there. And he was a good guy too. But the bottle got hold of him a little bit too. But he overcame it later on and overcame it very well. He did all of the things you have to do to overcome it. And he did it well. He's a good guy. Mary Agnes was a beautiful girl. She didn't go off to the war because we needed her around the house. Mom had to have her around the house because Mom was getting up and a little older. So she became a Rosie the River, and she went to work for the Anaconda Wire and Cable Company, and that wire and cable was used by the military during the war. She would go to work every morning at 7 o'clock, come home every afternoon at 3 o'clock. She was a very, very pretty woman, really was, girl, and I loved her. She treated me like a baby. They all treated me like a baby because I was the youngest one in the family. And I got kind of mad at that. I didn't want to be a baby, you know, but when she'd get home, we'd always have something good to eat. Mom would fix a good meal for her, and I got to share it. When she met Joe, that was neat. I liked old Joe. He and I did a lot of stuff together too. Joe McAfee. Joe was in the military too. Anyway, she was just real kind and wonderful. Rita was a beautiful lady, and she loved me when I was little. She just wanted to take care of me. And she went off to nurses training when I was real small, pretty small. I couldn't quite figure out what nurses training. She went to Fort Wayne, and I said, nurses training, what's that? You know? I think she became a very good nurse at Marion General Hospital, is where she worked after the war. I think she was barely a nurse when the war started, and so they dragged her to fort near Fort Wayne, or at least in the eastern part of the state, in a hospital there, and took care of wounded soldiers all the time. She was a wonderful lady. I'll never forget when she's very much older and was losing some of her memory, and she saw me in this place in the funeral home, coming in, Tommy, and I hadn't seen her for several years, and she hardly knew anybody else, but she knew me because she loved me because I was a little boy, her little brother. Rita was a wonderful lady, and she was beautiful too. She really, she was pretty. But Dick, I don't think he stayed around the house all that much. That I knew him as much as I did Ed. Ed and I were always doing something ornery. But Dick was more mature. I guess that's why he went in the Army. immediately. When the draft came, he was one of the first ones right up in line. He and Dutch, my brother-in-law. It was just one memory he had that he told us about, and that was of a young boy, he says, couldn't have been older than 12 or 14 years old, in a German Nazi uniform, lying against a tree, was back up against a tree, and a hole right in the middle of his forehead. And he was just enough to hear him crying, "Mama, Mama." And Dick could never forget that. He didn't want to talk about any of the other things that happened in the war, because there were so many. I wouldn't talk about myself killing somebody either. Ugh, jeez. Anyway, Dick was a good guy. He married Marion not too long after the war. He started a liquor store, it was interesting, in Newcastle, Indiana. And I liked that, because by that time I was drinking too much. And he had a wonderful family. We'd go there quite often to Newcastle, wasn't that very far from Marion, and just have a good time there. Cecilia, Celie. Never called her Cecilia. I don't know who would call her Cecilia. Her name's Celie. Everybody knows that. Celie was my boss. She not only took care of me, she made me do this and that and the other thing. She would rat on me every once in a while to Mom, you know, but I lived with it. Very lovable, though, in spite of that. I remember when she got sick one time. I didn't know why she was sick, but she was off to a hospital someplace. Celie was the more nervous of the three, and that's why she was my bossy type. She didn't want anything to go wrong around the house, but I loved her. She was real pretty too, and the boys liked her. I can't remember who they all were, but she had boys that would come around the house every once in a while to see her. Dutch used to come around all the time to just come to the back door, but I think mainly because he wanted to see the girls in the family. He didn't know which one to pick, so he picked Rita. I loved that family. Besides beating up on me all the time for fun, well, he had paper out too. And he taught me how to fold the papers and throw them up on the porch and that. And if I didn't do it the right way, he gave me wet fur. And he kept me under control. We played basketball together. We were always breaking into the gym. Yeah, that's right. We played basketball together a lot.
Do you remember the time we combed Mother's hair, put makeup on her, and Father McCarthy walked in?
Father Schmidt.
Father Schmidt, okay. He walked in and she was so embarrassed.
She had her hair down long and a red ribbon in her hair.
It was the lipstick, I think, that bothered her the most. Well, we didn't really dress her up, but she liked to have us comb her hair. She had long hair, you know, and
but she rolled it up.
yeah. But in the evening, she'd be sitting there, and she went to somebody brush her hair, and it always felt good to her. So one time we brushed her hair and fixed it up, put ribbons in it, and put rouge and lipstick on. She never wore makeup. And we put this on, and Father Schmidt walked in.
The priest used to walk in sometimes.
Yeah,
they
hardly ever knocked.
knock.
They just walked in the back door.
Well, he came in the front, if you remember.
Did he?
We had the front closed off because it was cheaper to heat this It was blind.
We probably didn't hear him.
Yeah, he probably knocked at the front door and walked in and opened the dining room door, and there we were. I can still see that.
And she was so embarrassed.
Because she thought priests were really
They did
the
like
best
lipstick.
people on earth.
In the little sunny town on a little quiet driveway, Jesus goes all around, and he looks at war too badly, paramedic camels to the ground. Just little
Shack is built way back about 25 feet from the railroad track. Lingers on my mind most all the time. Keeps calling me back to my little old shack. I'd be just as sassy as Haile Selassie if I were king. Wouldn't mean a thing. Put my boots on tall, read the writing on the wall, and it wouldn't mean a thing, not a doggone thing. There's a queen waiting there in a rocking chair, just blowing her top on Gator's beer. Looking all around and I'm trucking on down, cause I'm glad to get back to my daddy.
That was beautiful, Celie. Man, this is too beautiful.